Well, joining us right now here on Agriculture of America, powered by our friends at Cenex, their premium lubricants and diesel will help keep you going during a busy harvest season. Visit Cenex.com for more. Let's have a conversation about land values and take a look at the whole picture that we're kind of seeing now across the country when it comes to ag land and commercial land and much more. Joining us now, he is with National Land Realty. Alec Wardenburg is with us here today. Alec, it's great to talk with you, sir. Hope all is well.
Yeah, Jesse, all good on my end. I'm parked on the side of the road here, but I think we've got good coverage, so I'm excited to jump into it.
Well, I appreciate you making some time. I know you're busy traveling through parts of Missouri and Iowa this week, taking a look at some different properties that might be coming on the market and more. And I would love to just start our conversation as we're entering now into the fourth quarter of 2025. I'm curious what you have been seeing in terms of just overall land values. Are we seeing prices for not only ag land, but commercial, recreational, et cetera? Are we seeing prices plateau? Are we still seeing a rise? Are we seeing a fall? What's kind of the perspective you have in terms of where land values are right now, Alec?
Yeah, I really like that word plateau that you used. I tell people a lot that I'm very blessed in my business because I'm pretty well diversified. I live in our home office is about an hour west of St. Louis, and then we also cover really all of Illinois and then southeast Iowa. So we do, I'd say about half my business is transitional land, mainly for that residential development. And then we also, like I said, we take care of quite a bit of tillable land. I have a few guys that focus more on the recreational side, but I feel like I do have a pretty good picture of what's going on here in the Midwest. And I think overall, we saw this big tick up as prices jumped up, and we were just setting records. Next door farms were just setting records just because that's how it was going. It just kept increasing. And now things, like you said, we have this plateau where it's not going up, it's not going down. Prices seem to be steady. I think people are nervous about that because they don't know where it's going, but I think we're just kind of tracking along here. The main reason, in my experience this year, what we're seeing that's carrying the market is cash, whether that's folks that have inherited money or maybe cashing out an IRA or 1031 exchange holders. So I usually tell folks, we used to, whether it was a listing or an auction, we were really looking for those maybe 3 or 5 real players, real buyers that were kind of pushing that price. Now I think, again, whether it's an auction or a traditional listing, we're really looking for maybe that 1 or 2 right buyers. There's just not as much demand as there was, but I've said it 1,000 times this year that quality land price will sell. Not 10% over market, but if it's priced right there at market, we're still moving some land. So, and then just to hit on the kind of residential transitional land side of our business, again, we saw demand for new homes just climbing. Developers were really rocking and rolling. And then I'm sure, just that, like we talk about in the residential market, that demand is lower. So I think the overall demand for new home construction has slowed down a little bit. But then again, we have some things like, relatively lower costs to build. So I think even the developers are kind of on this plateau of not trying to get too far out of their coverage, but just kind of sticking steady. And that's really what I'm seeing in the overall land market.
I'm curious. When I've had some of these conversations before, I've always wondered if there's any maybe indicators or keys that we could see that give us maybe some foreshadowing to what could happen with price direction. I've heard at times folks say, well, whatever happens in Iowa, for instance, especially with ag land, might hit surrounding states, 1 to 2 years later. Like it's sometimes Iowa, Illinois can be kind of that pre-indicator of what direction we're going to go. Is that something, would you agree with that? What's your thoughts on, can we, take away maybe any trends or potential trends by looking at, say, a state like Iowa or Illinois or Missouri, et cetera, Alec?
Yeah, I would almost look more at the major municipality in that area, whether that's St. Louis or Columbia, Missouri, or even some bigger cities in Illinois. But St. Louis is a great example. We've got 2 or 3 counties around St. Louis that are relatively rural. But my goodness, recreational ground or 50/50 farms have shot up to 8, 9, even 10,000 an acre. So I think we can really quickly look at those counties that maybe surround St. Louis, or whatever your major municipality is, and see, okay, how fast are prices increasing there? And then the four, five, six counties that are on the outer perimeter of that are going to lag behind those first few. But this year has been, really the last few years have been a great story of that these prices have just been nuts in the counties around the larger, more heavy populated areas. So the demand's higher there. And then we just see that demand creep kind of spread further and further from those major cities.
I think about this as well, Alec, and maybe you can shed some light here. But I know specifically for ag land, there's a lot of emphasis on just overall productivity, not just putting a crop in the ground, but what other sources of income might be out there for farmers' land and soil productivity and soil health and overall sustainability and things like that. Are those topics that you have come up in conversation with folks when they're looking at possibly selling or buying land that's more ag specific, more tillable acres?
Yeah, on the tillable side, we just closed a farm last week that was a great example of it. It was kind of a one-off farm, 65 acres, irrigated. But that seller said it best that when times are tougher like this, in our area, farmers are struggling to get $4 corn right now, and input costs are higher than ever. So I think the important thing is that farmers are maximizing their acres, that they're doing whatever they can, almost kind of getting really granular with the land they have, and we're talking about a market where land values are really expensive too. So you either can make more money with higher commodity prices, which is just not happening right now, or you can really focus on what you've got. And maybe it's not a good term, or there's probably a better word, but I call it babying a farm. I think to baby a farm is really important right now.
And I think too, there's been plenty of talk in recent years about different renewable energy sources, conservation easements, things like that. I know a lot of those items are still, as I understand it anyway, a pretty hot topic when it comes to land value discussions and more, Alec.
Yeah, and I think we could have a whole separate talk about renewable energy and some of how these leases work and everything. But I would say there are more options now to farmers than there ever have been. And I think the willingness for traditional landowners to start looking at these different options has really increased. So I think over the next 5 and 10 years, we will see traditional farmland being used differently, 100%.
So, if I'm a producer who is looking to buy land, even with this tough ag economy right now, or I'm someone who's looking to sell land right now, what would be some reminders you would leave with folks if they're looking at dipping their toe into the land market on either side right now, Alec?
I think whether you're buying or selling, there's opportunity right now. Um, Again, some of the farms we closed in September are great examples of this, where maybe some larger farmers had some one-off farms, like that one I just mentioned that was kind of down the bottom, away from the main operation. So I think there was a good opportunity there for him to sell that to kind of ease up the balance sheet, and he was actually able to rent that one back. But even for the buyer, then there was an opportunity for, you said, dip their toes into the water. They could buy a relatively smaller farm, 64 acres, on kind of a one-off. So I think over the next year or two, we're going to see a lot more of these one-off farms at relatively reasonable prices being sold. I know here in the Midwest, I always talk about just an easy 3% return on cash rate, and that's been tough to do. But I think for those investor buyers or even some folks that are just wanting to test farm ground, I think that 3% number is going to be easier to come by.
Well, I know folks can learn more, reach out if they have questions. Nationalland.com is the website for National Land Realty. Alec, anything final you would mention or reiterate to folks here on the show today?
No, I mean, I think we're getting into that really fun time of year where folks can use their land, whether that's, of course, we have harvest going on, but I've got a lot of rec buyers and recreational landowners, and they're out there kind of getting ready for deer season. So I think it's a really exciting time to be outside, and this is really my favorite time of year to be driving around and brokering land.
Well, we appreciate the conversation. Again, nationalland.com for more. Alec Wardenburg, National Land Realty. Thanks for joining us here on AOA, and we'll have to get you back on the show again down the road and catch up on where land values and more are sitting. Thanks for the time, and we'll let you go. Have a great day.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Have a good one.